going?
Welcome back to Scrapper's Corner, our bi-weekly podcast here out of the Innovation Collaboratory in the Saguaro Hall, room 127, within the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at the University of Arizona. Emre is with me as always.
Hello Mars, hello everyone.
So Emre, I was driving in today and had a chance to drive by the campus farm, and I can't help every time I drive by to really take notice and appreciate that smell of agriculture, that wholesomeness, the work ethic. Do you ever have that same kind of reaction?
I do, plus some other reactions, especially when the cows are around and they're letting gases loose. That's kind of not such a pleasant smell, do you think?
Well, I don't know, some people might disagree with you, but what if I could convince you that that smell of cow farts actually represents opportunity for money making?
Oh, okay, I'm listening now.
Now I have your
Yeah.
attention. So rather than me tell you about where that opportunity might lie, or waft, if you will, why don't we have our guest today tell us a little bit about it, because she has some interesting ideas to share with us around not only what to do about cow farts and why we should do something about cow farts, but actually the opportunity it represents. So with that said, do you want to introduce our guest?
Surely. So our guest today is Tyler Thorp, a prior student of Mars with a very interesting innovation that she's going to talk about. But Tyler, before we get into the innovation, let's hear a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I am currently a PhD student here at the University of Arizona. I'm studying higher education and agricultural education. Dr. Mars is my advisor, so technically still a student of Dr. Mars.
Best of luck to you.
Thanks.
Nobody gets out alive.
Oh my gosh. And yeah, I don't know, is there anything else I need to talk about?
No, well, we appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us in Scrapper's Corner. And obviously, our main mission is to feature the innovative ideas and entrepreneurial spirit of students. So with that said, tell us what you're going to do about cow farts and why we should care.
Well, so this was a project that I worked on about, 5 years ago now or something?
Yeah, it's about that 4 or 5 years ago.
And so basically the problem is that the #1 contributor of methane worldwide is livestock. So for those of you who don't know, methane is the most dangerous greenhouse gas in the atmosphere. It's 4 times as potent at trapping the heat from the sun as carbon dioxide is. So taking methane out of the atmosphere in any capacity would be like super helpful for global warming. And again, the #1 contributor is livestock. So my partner and I, who are thinking about doing this innovation, decided that we were going to try to harness cow farts, basically, which is where the methane comes from. And we found some technologies that can turn that methane into a usable fuel source. So we're not only taking it out of the atmosphere, but we're also using it. We're not just making a solid brick of methane and leaving it, if that makes sense.
How did you come up with this idea, Tyler? What was the thing that initiated you focusing on this idea?
If I could comment on that, it's like, so clearly the idea is capturing cow farts, but there could be a number of different ways of doing that, and one can let their imagination run wild. So as you're kind of answering Emery's question, can you talk a little bit about some of the ideas you ruled out before you came to the one that you ultimately settled on, and why the rest of them stunk?
Yeah, so
Thank you.
yeah, so basically my partner and I come from agriculture backgrounds. My grandpa owned a dairy farm, and he was sort of ran out by rising costs and can't compete with large agriculture. And she came from a ranching background, similar story. And so we found out that the Arizona legislature was trying to pass a law that would put a tax per head of cattle that farmers would have to pay for the amount of methane that their cows were producing, right? And so we thought, ranchers aren't the ones who should be suffering. There should be a better way to take methane out of the atmosphere. We still need food production regardless. And so we looked at several other options and what's sort of being done now. So one of our benchmarks was this like giant vacuum that they would put inside of a feedlot that would sort of suck in the methane, and then out would come this solid brick of methane. So it technically took it out of the atmosphere, but it just turned it into a different form. And then the other benchmark we had was like a backpack that would be surgically inserted into the cow's colon or whatever, and then the methane would just fill up in the bag, which again, taking it out of the air to put it in a bag isn't really, doing anything else with it, right? And it's also really inhumane too, due to the cows. So.
And I know Emre is not wanting to say it, but it also sounds very expensive.
Yeah, and just unnecessary. It's not even doing anything. Yeah, and painful.
Cruel.
Yeah, so we just wanted to see who was researching this, and we found 2 researchers at 2 different universities who found zeolites, which are basically like what's inside of a air purifier, and then another technology that could take methane that's been captured and turn it into fuel. So
Super. And so you were an undergraduate at the time?
Yes.
Were you? That's very impressive. So it goes to show that when you're an undergraduate, you don't need to rule out being able to come up with good ideas from just information that's available everywhere.
right.
What triggered this, for example?
I'm wondering, Tyler, if you could talk a little bit about what maybe one of the more obvious weaknesses of your idea might have been, and how you would have overcome that should you continue to pursue it. Should you have continued to pursue it?
Probably say that one of the biggest weaknesses is that the technologies that we found weren't something that we could do ourselves. So we would have to, if we pursued this, we would have to work with people at different universities and try to get people to come together, and we'd have to license patented technology. It's not something that we took to researchers and we own. So it's kind of a solution based on other people's solutions. We're more bringing people together.
So it's been 5 years now since you had the idea. Do you know if anybody else has run with this idea in the scientific domain or the industrial?
When it comes to this idea, is there still gas in the tank?
There is. I know that there are people who are working on it. Right now, there's just no technology that can take the methane out of the zeolite at this point. So we can capture it, and then once we have that second technology that can put the methane into or take the methane out of the zeolite, then we have the third methane that can turn it into a usable fuel source. But until that second technology comes out, we're kind of just waiting on the researchers at this point.
Gotcha. So I would imagine somebody who tackles the idea of pulling methane out of the atmosphere, first discharged by cattle or livestock, would probably have to have a certain creativity about them. So do you consider yourself a creative person?
Yes, I do. I think I've always sort of been a person who, if I thought that a person could do something, like if there is a person that can do it, then I could do it. And the creative part is just figuring out how to do it. Like, how did they learn how to do it? If something can be learned, I can learn how to do it. So
that sounds to me like certainly there's an element of creativity, but also a healthy blend of grit and tenacity as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I think what we see in the work that we do with students and faculty sometimes here at the U of A and at other places that our careers have taken us, that it's all about this innate, genetically predetermined sense of creativity, and either you have it or not. But the more conversations we have, the more obvious it becomes that it's much more dynamic and complex than that. So that's one of the myths that we're working on
Exactly.
dispelling.
So we typically end our conversations with asking some trick questions.
Okay.
I'll ask the first one, and then Matt will have another one for you, probably more difficult question coming from Matt. So
What is that supposed to mean?
We'll
Simple
know,
versus
we'll know
complex.
exactly.
Yes.
We'll know when we hear your question. My question is, so 5 years ago you had this idea. What is the next most exciting idea you had since then? In terms of a creative innovation that you might have liked to have followed through?
I, after doing that program, really wanted to, and I still do, it's just time and resources at this point, but I would really love to do sort of a customized, I wanted it to be like a nonprofit, so
Yeah.
we would come in, and if you wanted to grow your own food, we would
Yeah.
come in and figure out how to do it. So
Sure.
if you lived in a 1-bedroom or studio apartment, we'd come in with your windows with a vertical garden that was self-watering, and all you'd have to do is pick what you needed for your
Yeah.
salad type of situation. So I think that's where the future is going.
I agree.
with
Optimized
agriculture.
system, kind of, you can monitor it with an app. And
Right.
It may be some feedback loop, so it
Yeah.
takes care
Well,
of
it's
itself.
maximizing
Yeah.
space as
Yeah.
well.
Space and time, because
Yes.
you don't have, like, nobody has time to test the
Yeah.
nitrogen levels of their soil, so
Yeah.
if the technology can
What?
help-
It's
Yeah,
like
no.
the first thing I do when I roll out of
Exactly.
bed. I go check the nitrogen levels and
Yeah.
go
So-
about my day. Yeah.
What's your question, Matt?
Yeah. So Tyler, I'm gonna ask you to rate the overall entrepreneurial quality of the cow fart idea, with 1 being the lowest quality and 10 being the highest quality. Where would you put it objectively, and why?
I don't even know if I could objectively, but I'd probably say about a 6.
Okay.
Because we only spent 4 weeks on it, I think, over the summer. So, which is below my own personal level of like quality I like to put into things. I think if we, my partner and I, were to actually fully go at this and spend a lot of time at this, I could raise that more. But we did basically the fundamental surface layer research on this. So.
I think that is a very objective answer, and I think it underscores an important message, that is, no matter how creative the idea is or how disruptive its potential, without the sweat equity,
Right.
it's only going to be an idea.
Like, I'd rather have a mediocre idea that has 110% of the like actual going out there and doing it than like a great idea that nobody follows through with. So.
And some people have said what's important is what the idea morphs into
Right.
as you discover more and more. So I agree with you on the 6 out of 10 scale.
So Tyler, with that said, we have one final question for you, and it may be the hardest one.
Okay.
Burrito or taco, and why?
I like burritos because I don't. When I eat a taco, it all like kind of falls out. It's kind of messy, and I just like to eat it all together. I
Yeah.
guess. But I like both for different reasons.
I'm a burrito kind of guy, and one reason is because you can wrap it all up. And speaking of wrapping it up, I think we'll do that for this edition of Scrapper's Corner.
Okay.
So Tyler, thanks for spending part of your day with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Tyler. And I have one new idea that just got in my mind, which is tiny little burritos placed in a taco. Best of all worlds.
With that said, Emre, as always, it's almost been a pleasure. So with that said, until the next Scrapper's Corner, go innovate.
15 minutes.
Bravo. We're getting